The woman's scream hit the cabin like a shockwave. "I'm not flying this plane if he is the pilot." Every head snapped toward the front. Within seconds, phones were already in the air. Recording, a man stood up immediately, pointing toward the cockpit. "Yeah, this is crazy. We paid for this flight. We deserve a real pilot." Whispers turned into loud accusations and then into open fear. Flight attendants rushed forward, trying to calm people down, but the situation was already spiraling out of control. What if he messes up? This doesn't feel safe. Why would they put him in charge? Another passenger grabbed his bag, ready to walk off, while a couple near the aisle demanded the captain be replaced right now. Inside the cockpit, Captain Darius Cole heard every word through the half-open door. He didn't react, didn't argue, didn't even turn around. He just calmly placed his hands on the controls and adjusted his headset, because in less than an hour, every single one of those voices would change. The lead flight attendant stepped inside her face. "Tense, Captain, we have a situation. Several passengers are refusing to stay on board unless..." She hesitated. "Unless you're replaced." Darius gave a small nod, as if he had heard this before, which he had more times than he could count. He pressed the intercom button. His voice calm, steady, and controlled. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. My name is Captain Darius Cole. I have over 12,000 hours of flight experience, and your safety is my top priority. If anyone is uncomfortable, you are free to disembark now, but this flight will be departing shortly." Silence spread across the cabin, but it wasn't acceptance, it was hesitation. Two passengers stood up angrily, grabbing their luggage, muttering under their breath as they walked off. Others exchanged looks, unsure but unwilling to deal with delays. Eventually, no one else moved. The doors closed, the plane pushed back, and just like that, they were committed. As the aircraft lifted into the sky, the earlier tension didn't disappear, it just changed form. People sat stiff, eyes alert, listening to every sound as if expecting something to go wrong at any second. The man who had been the loudest critic kept glancing toward the ceiling, gripping his armrest tighter than necessary, while the woman who started it all avoided looking anywhere near the cockpit. Up front, everything was calm, controlled, routine. Deus moved with precision, every switch, every adjustment, second nature. His co-pilot, Jenna, watched him for a moment. "You handled that well," she said quietly. He didn't respond right away, just focused on leveling the aircraft, then finally said, "I'm not here to convince them, I'm here to fly." The first hour passed smoothly, almost enough to make people feel embarrassed about their earlier reactions. A few passengers relaxed slightly, one even laughed nervously, as if trying to shake off the tension, and then it happened. The plane dropped. Not a small dip, not normal turbulence, but a sudden, violent fall that sent drinks flying and screams tearing through the cabin. Oxygen masks didn't deploy, but panic hit instantly. The aircraft shook hard, rattling overhead bins and sending fear through every seat. Inside the cockpit, warning alarms exploded across the panel, hydraulic pressure dropping fast. Jenna's voice tightened. "We've got a system failure." Darius was already moving, scanning instruments, adjusting controls. The aircraft wasn't responding normally. Something was seriously wrong. He hit the intercom again, his voice firm, cutting through the chaos. "Ladies and gentlemen, remain seated and fasten your seatbelts. We are experiencing technical difficulties, but we are in control." But this time, control wasn't guaranteed. A second warning flashed, something far worse than the first. Jenna looked at him, eyes wide. "Secondary list system is failing." That almost never happened. Now it wasn't just a problem, it was a crisis. Back in the cabin, everything fell apart. The same passengers who had complained earlier were now praying, crying, gripping their seats. The man who demanded a different pilot earlier looked completely frozen, his confidence gone, replaced by fear. Flight attendants strapped themselves in, their calm expressions cracking under pressure. In the cockpit, Darius made a decision in seconds. "We're diverting," he said, scanning the nearest options. "Denver is closest, notify air traffic control." Jenna relayed the message as Darius manually took more control of the aircraft, fighting every adjustment, the margin for error shrinking by the second. The descent was rough, violent, unpredictable. The plane shook as if it could come apart at any moment. Passengers screamed, some called loved ones, others just closed their eyes, waiting. The woman who had shouted at the beginning now whispered over and over, "Please, please, please." The same pilot she didn't trust was now the only thing between her and disaster. Darius blocked everything out, no voices, no fear, just focus, altitude, speed, wind, angle, distance, every variable calculated in real time. The runway appeared in the distance, too fast, too unstable, too risky, but it was their only chance. "Brace for impact," he said quietly. The wheels hit the runway hard, the force slammed through the aircraft tires, screeching violently, but Darius held it steady, fighting every second as the plane struggled to stay aligned. For a moment it felt like it might fail, then slowly the aircraft stabilized, slowed, and finally stopped. Silence. Then chaos of a different kind. People crying, laughing, clapping, some in shock, some in disbelief. They were alive. Emergency crews surrounded the plane as passengers were evacuated one by one, many of them shaking, some unable to even walk properly. But something had changed. The same people who had avoided looking forward before were now staring toward the cockpit, waiting. Darius stepped out last, removing his cap, his face calm but tired, and that's when it happened. The woman who had screamed at the start stepped forward slowly, her eyes filled with guilt. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "I was wrong." The man who had demanded a real pilot followed. "I shouldn't have said that. You saved us." One by one, others nodded, some unable to speak, but their expressions said everything. Darius looked at them for a moment, not angry, not bitter, just calm. "You're safe," he said simply, "that's what matters." But deep down they all knew that wasn't the only thing that mattered. Because hours earlier they had judged him, questioned him, doubted him. And yet, when everything went wrong, he was the one who didn't fail. Later that night, videos from the flight flooded social media, millions of views in hours. People watching the screams, the accusations, the fear, and then the landing, the moment everything changed. The comments were filled with one realization over and over again: they judged him, and he saved them anyway. The news didn't stop that night, it only got bigger. By morning, every major channel was running the same headline: a mid-air emergency, a near disaster, and the pilot who saved everyone. But what made it explode online wasn't just the landing. It was the footage from before takeoff. Clips of passengers shouting, pointing, questioning him, judging him, side by side with the moment. Those same people walked off the plane alive because of him. The contrast was undeniable. And the internet noticed. Millions of views turned into tens of millions within hours. Comments flooded in, people arguing, debating, reacting, some angry, some emotional, some ashamed on behalf of what they saw. Inside a quiet hotel room, Darius sat on the edge of his bed, staring at his phone as the notifications kept coming: interview requests, messages from the airline, even people he hadn't spoken to in years. Jenna knocked lightly on the door. "You seeing this?" she asked, holding up her own phone. He gave a small nod. "Yeah." She stepped inside, shaking her head. "It's everywhere." He let out a slow breath. "None of that changes what happened up there." "No, it doesn't," she said, "but it might change what happens after." Across the country, people were watching, not just the story but themselves in it, the way assumptions were made, the way fear turned into judgment before anything had even happened. At the same time, the airline's headquarters was in full crisis mode. Executives gathered in a conference room, reviewing footage, statements, reports, trying to get ahead of the narrative. One of them paused the video right at the moment a passenger shouted, "We want a real pilot." The room went silent. "This isn't just about the emergency landing," one executive said quietly. "This is about us." Back at the airport, the passengers who had been on that flight were also dealing with the aftermath. Some gave interviews trying to explain themselves. Some avoided cameras, completely unable to face what they had said on record. The woman who had screamed at the beginning sat in her living room watching the footage replay again and again, each time feeling the same wave of regret wash over her. She picked up her phone more than once, typing out a message, then deleting it, unsure of what she could even say that would make a difference. Meanwhile, the man in the business suit who had demanded a different pilot found himself being recognized not for who he was professionally but for what he had said on that plane. His co-workers had seen the video, his clients had seen it, even his own family had questions he couldn't easily answer. For Darius, though, the attention felt different, not new, just louder. Later that day, the airline requested a formal statement and a possible press appearance. They wanted him to speak to the media, to be the face of the story. He almost declined, but Jenna convinced him, "People need to hear from you, not just about the landing but about everything else too," so he agreed. The press conference was packed, cameras flashing, reporters calling out questions before he even reached the podium. He stood there for a moment, looking out at the crowd, then began calmly. "Yesterday was a difficult situation, but it's what we trained for. Our job is to keep passengers safe, no matter what." A reporter interrupted. "Captain, what was going through your mind when passengers were questioning your ability before takeoff?" The room quieted instantly. Darius paused, just long enough to choose his words carefully. "I've experienced doubt before," he said calmly. "It's not new, but once we're in the air, none of that matters. What matters is doing the job right." Another reporter asked, "Do you think race played a role in what happened this time?" He didn't hesitate. "Yes." The word landed heavily across the room. Bahi continued without raising his voice. "What matters is how we respond to it, not just in moments like that, but moving forward." The clip of that answer spread just as fast as the original footage. People respected the way he handled it: calm, direct, undeniable, but not everyone reacted the same. Some tried to defend the passengers, saying fear makes people act irrationally. Others pointed out that fear doesn't come from nowhere, it comes from what people believe before anything even happens. Back at the airline, something else was happening. Quietly, policies were being reviewed, training programs discussed, conversations started that had been ignored for too long. Darius returned home a few days later, expecting things to settle down, but they didn't. At a grocery store, a man approached him hesitantly. "You're the pilot, right?" Darius nodded slightly. The man swallowed hard. "I just wanted to say thank you." Moments like that kept happening, small, quiet acknowledgments from strangers who saw more than just the story, they saw what it meant. But the moment that stayed with him the most came unexpectedly. A letter arrived at his door, handwritten, no return address. He opened it slowly, recognizing the name at the bottom immediately. It was from the woman who had screamed. The words were simple but heavy. She wrote about that moment, about the fear, about how quickly she judged him and how wrong she had been. She didn't try to justify it, didn't make excuses, just admitted the truth and thanked him for saving her life. Darius read it twice, then folded it carefully. Not because it erased what happened, but because it meant something had changed. Somewhere in that moment between fear and survival, Perspective had shifted. Weeks later, the story faded from headlines, replaced by something new, as it always did. But the impact didn't disappear completely. At the airline, new training sessions began, focusing not just on technical skills but on awareness, on understanding bias, on creating a culture where respect wasn't optional. Darius continued flying like he always had, same routes, same responsibilities, same calm focus in the cockpit. But now sometimes when passengers boarded, they looked at him differently, not with doubt but with recognition and occasionally respect. One evening, as he prepared for another flight, Jenna glanced at him with a slight smile. "Looks like a full flight." He nodded, checking the controls. "Any complaints?" she asked lightly. He smirked, just a little. "None yet." They both knew that didn't mean never, but it also didn't mean always. As the passengers settled in and the doors closed, Darius picked up the intercom once again, his voice steady, confident, familiar. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking, and this time there were no whispers, no doubts, just silence and trust."